This is Load Bearing Leadership, a podcast about responsibility, pressure, and what leadership must hold to endure. This isn't a show about motivation, productivity, or leadership hacks. It's a thinking space for leaders carrying real consequence, where decisions have weight and systems have to hold. I'm Ric Marks. Let's begin. In leadership, delegation is often treated as the solution to pressure. If you're overloaded, you're told to delegate more. If you're tired, you're told to empower your team. And if you're stretched, you're told to step back. And delegation doesn't matter. But there is a category of responsibility that does not move when work is handed off. And that category is consequence. Leaders don't ultimately carry tasks. They carry what happens after decisions are made. And that weight doesn't disappear when execution is shared. This episode is about that distinction because misunderstanding it is one of the reasons leadership feels heavy even in well-run organizations. Delegation moves action. It does not move accountability. And a decision can be distributed, an outcome cannot. And when something goes wrong, the system doesn't look sideways, it looks upward. When something succeeds, the leader still absorbs the long-tail responsibility of sustaining it. And this is why many leaders feel confused by advice to just let go. They have let go of tasks. They have let go of control. They have built capable teams. And yet internally, the vigilance remains. Not because they don't trust, but because responsibility hasn't actually left the room. That's not a personal failure. It is a structural reality of leadership. You see this most clearly in moments like these. You delegate a decision and still rehearse the consequences afterward. You empower someone and remain alert to downstream risk. You trust a system, but stay ready to intervene if it destabilizes. Now, from the outside, this can look like control. And from the inside, it feels like awareness. But this is the invisible load that leaders carry. Forecasting impact and absorbing uncertainty. Holding emotional steadiness so others can function. It is only rarely named. And it's often misunderstood. And over time, it accumulates. And not because leaders are willing to share power, but because some responsibility is non-transferable. There's a way to see this that makes it clearer. Think of an organization not as a hierarchy, but as a vessel under load. Now, a ship doesn't float because one person is strong. It floats because weight is distributed. Roles are clear, and the hull holds. Now, the captain is not omnipotent, but the captain is accountable for the vessel. Now, the crew members, they hold real authority within their roles. Navigation, steering, watch, cargo. Now, each decision matters. Each role carries consequence. Now, imagine there's a buoy in the water, a warning marker. Ignoring it doesn't remove the reef. Avoiding it out of ego doesn't change the conditions. And removing the buoy because it's inconvenient doesn't make the water safer. It just makes collision more likely. And this is how leadership advice works sometimes. Signals are mistreated as obstacles instead of information. And warnings are dismissed because of who delivered them. The smaller vessels are ignored because they're not impressive. But water doesn't care about status, and systems don't respect ego. And when load isn't understood, leaders tend to respond in predictable ways. Now, some dump load overboard. Then the ship feels lighter, but at the cost of cargo, people, or purpose. Now, some hoard the load. They take everything on themselves, believing that that's what responsibility looks like. And the ship stays intact for a while until the hull begins to strain. Now, neither response is malicious. Both are attempts to stay afloat without a shared model of load. Partnered leadership is not about removing responsibility. It's about distributing ballasts intentionally so the vessel stays stable under pressure. And that requires trust, yes, but also clarity about what cannot be offloaded. And responsibility is not control. Responsibility is custodianship. It means you are the steward of consequence. Not because you want power, but because the system needs a place for consequence to land. And this is why leadership is different from management. Management optimizes the process, and leadership holds outcomes. And that distinction matters under strain. When leaders understand this, something shifts. Guilt reduces. Clarity increases. Isolation can be addressed honestly. Not by pretending the load isn't there, but by designing leadership that can hold it without collapse. And if leadership still feels heavy despite delegation, well, this is why. Some responsibility cannot be handed off. It must be held well. The work of load-bearing leadership is not to eliminate that weight, but to build systems and partnerships and cultures where it can be carried sustainably. In the next episode, we'll look at what happens when leaders carry this responsibility alone for too long, and why isolation is one of the earliest signs of systemic strain. For now, the question isn't, how do I get rid of this weight? It's how do I carry it without breaking myself or the people around me? Leadership doesn't fail first through incompetence. It fails when the load it carries is no longer visible, shared, or held well. Load-bearing leadership exists to give language to that weight and to design leadership that can endure without breaking people or systems. If this episode stayed with you, let it settle before you move on. We'll continue next time.